What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke, and here with a prop preview for round one at the Charles Schwab Challenge. It's been a while since we've done one of these breakdowns, but going to let you know what to expect out there on Thursday, and then of course going to go through a few of the different prop sites out there and some props that I have my eyes on, and already some slips in here for the first round of action. So we'll start with the golf course. Make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes with what to expect. And we've got a more difficult than average course. The Charles Schwab Challenge, Colonial Country Club to be exact, is been around forever. We know a lot about the track, and it's not a long course, right? It's not difficult because it's 7,500 yards, because the greens are impossible to hit. It's a lot more about the strategy and angles at play. In fact, it's one of the shorter tracks that you have on the entire tour. So you're going to have a lot of different types of players in contention, and overall, it plays difficult because of some of the undulation on the greens, some of the difficulty at getting up and down when you miss the greens out there. Not so much because it's impossible to hit the fairways or the green. So first thing we'll focus on here, outside of the scoring average, which was about 3/4 of a stroke over par, are the driving accuracy percentages and the green regulation averages. Both of them are only just slightly lower than your tour average. In fact, driving accuracy is only about 3.7% lower than what you usually see week to week, and then your green regulation percentage is just over 5% lower than what you have for most weeks on tour, which are slightly harder than what we see for most weeks, but that's not going to lead to this 0.72 over par average, right? A lot of that is because it's a par 70. There's only 2 par 5s on property, and there are a few tricky par 4s mixed in as well in that 450 to 500 yard range, which can help you mix in a few bogeys. So all of that to say that you're looking at a track where you're not going to see 7, 8 birdies made all the time. And a good score around here would be something like 3 to 5 under par. Last year, Sam Burns won this tournament with a 5 under par in the last round. You can see Tony Finau went up the board with a -3. But there's also some over par rounds mixed in, right? +2 for Scotty, +1 for Brendan Todd. +2 for somebody like Patrick Reed, who finished in the top 10 last year. So don't just think it's going to be a complete pushover for a golf course, right? It definitely has a defense. It's worth noting, though, that for this year, it looks like we're going to have perfect conditions on Thursday. So the next thing we'll focus on, of course, is the weather. Down here at the bottom, this is the most accurate model that I've seen over the last few months. It's on here at windy.com, the HRRMAR model. And towards the morning, you're looking at next to no wind, right? Your sustained winds are in the 1 to 3 knot range. The difference, or say the conversion rate between knots to miles an hour, is about 1.16. So you're talking about like 3 to 5 mile an hour winds at the very most. And then your wind gusts, they get to a maximum of just 8 knots, which is, like I said, right around like 9 miles an hour. So pretty much nothing for these players. It's going to be next to ideal for much of Thursday, and it continues throughout the afternoon, right? It's between 7 to 8 knots once again when it comes to the maximum wind gusts, which is pretty much all you could ask for from a conditions perspective. It's supposed to rain sometime overnight. It's rained a little bit in the Fort Worth area today. Scattered little showers that have passed through the area, especially during the morning. And then yesterday, it rained a ton in the area. So you're looking at a soft golf course that's going to have slightly easier to hit greens as a result. Probably slightly easier to hit fairways as a result too. And this 0.75 over par scoring average, I don't think is going to be accurate for round one. I would expect it to play a lot easier than that, probably closer to even par. Now, it might still play slightly over, like maybe like 0.1, 0.2 shots over par, but still at least half a stroke easier than what we saw last year. So when we're going through, we're looking at the metrics, keep that in mind, but also this driving accuracy and this green regulation average, I would expect both of those to improve. So perhaps rather than slightly below the tour average in both metrics, we see something closer to the tour average, or maybe even slightly better than the tour average, at least for Thursday's action, right? That's not just considering the, how receptive the course is, but also the fact that there's pretty much no wind being called for out there on Thursday. Looking at Wind Finder, we've looked at that in the past. They're calling for slightly higher winds, but from what we've tracked over the last few months, this site has been one of the more inaccurate on the entire industry. If you look at Willy Weather, you look at some of the other more traditional sources like a weather.com or AccuWeather, they're much more in line with what we're seeing here on windy.com, but specifically this HRRR model. But we don't even just have to look at those. We can go ahead and bring up a few more on here, I believe. Ooh. Let's get it to work. Let's go to the NAM. We got to do it one by one, I guess, right? On Thursday, right? This model is calling for, I think it's glitching out on me. Hold up, because that's not correct. There it is. Okay, I was like, none of them are calling for that much wind. I was like, that's new, but no, like you can see on here, right? They're all pretty much in the same ballpark. This GFS model up here is calling for like closer to 7 miles an hour, kind of like you saw for the HRR. I bet you what it's showing was where I'm at currently in Florida. That model that came up there for a second. But see the rest of them, like you can see this, obviously the model we were looking at was next to no wind. This NAM model, slightly higher winds, but again, it's only like 8 or 9 knots, right? So you're talking about 9, maybe 10 mile an hour wind gusts in the afternoon. This Medio Blue one is just like the HRR we're looking at. This Icon's very similar to the Triple R. Yeah, we got to think of a term for it. It's not an easy one to say. ECM model up here is also very similar. So yeah, this is what I'm expecting. I'm not sure what that rogue little model that came up that was calling for 30 miles an hour was talking about. So with that being said, these boards, especially the Prize Picks board, I think are right for some of the unders, right? They're projecting for it to play very similar to years past. And even at these kind of numbers, I think it'd be leaning towards a lot of unders. But considering the weather, how soft the golf course is going to play, I think we're looking at a really good situation to take advantage of. So just first, I want to point out some of these strokes lines. It's like 68.5 for some of your better players, like maybe 69 strokes for a Max Homa there. Your lower tier players are even at 70 strokes. Just keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to come back to our top props. Over here in Underdog, it's actually priced even lower, right? 67 strokes compared to 67.5 for Scotty. In fact, Scotty was actually at 68 strokes earlier today. And it's pretty much carried across the board, right? Morikawa is 68.5. Actually, Max Homa is at 69 on both sites. But these guys are calling for it to play relatively difficult in general. And if you go over here to No House Advantage, it's very similar to the Prize Picks board. The reason I wanted to point those out is I want to take a look at Bet365 over here, right? So they obviously post lines for strokes, and they have them with their odds, right? Over here, I'll point you to a few, right? Morikawa at 68.5, right? So same line that he's on Prize Picks is minus 175 for an under. Chris Kirk is minus 175 for an under at the same number. Jordan Spieth at 67.5, right? So keep in mind that's a stroke lower, right? Is minus money towards the under. You look at this whole board, right? Scotty is minus money at 67.5. Sungjae Im is super minus money, right? Minus 225 at 68.5. I mean, you're talking about a lot of value to be had here, right? And I know Tony Finau, Hovland are minus money for the over, but they're also a stroke lower than what they are over there on Prize Picks, Underdog, so on and so forth. You look at FanDuel. Now, this might be the most ridiculous of all the sites. Look at some of these parlays they have, okay? And you should never bet these. Just for the record out there, they have some horrible value when it comes to these parlays. Look at this. Scotty Scheffler and Victor Hovland to both shoot 67 or better in round one is minus 160, right? Just for comparison's sake, right? You could bet the under for Scotty Scheffler over here, right? And the under for an entire stroke higher, right? You could shoot 68 in this parlay and you would get paid 3x as opposed to the minus money parlay that you're getting over there, right? Probably like, I don't know, I think that's like $180, something like that. Just, it's not great. It's nowhere near the same kind of value you get over here on a prop site, right? But it's not just that. It's Scotty Scheffler, Spieth, or Tony Finau, bogey-free round. Okay, maybe that's not a great one to look at here. But still, that's minus money, right? That's like showing you they're not expecting this to play all that difficult. Let's find some of the better ones. Scotty Scheffler, Spieth, and Finau. So this is a 3-leg power play, right? It's an and. All to shoot 67 or better is just plus 175. So you'd only get paid out, what is that? Just under 3 units, right? Because you're getting your money back on these kind of situations compared to Prize Picks. So you're getting your money back. So you're getting like 2.75 units back for a 3-leg parlay that you'd be getting 5x for over there on Prize Picks. And their numbers are better, right? Tony Finau 68.5, right? Jordan Spieth 68.5. Sure, Scotty Scheffler still has to shoot 67 in either scenario, but this is the kind of value that I want to point out. I mean, look at this. Spieth and Sungjae both shoot 66 or better, right? It's just 2.5 to 1. That's just a little bit better than a 2-leg parlay, and it's just shoot 66 or better, right? Let alone counting the other sort of parlays you can do. There's a few other ones on here, right? The minus money one, I think that one was crazy. The Scheffler, Finau, and Hovland, and Morikawa. So this is a 4-leg power play, right? To shoot 69 or better, so obviously a little bit easier to get there, but still minus 210. So I point all this out to show you that I think there's a lot of value for these unders, and other sports books would agree. It's not every sports book, though. I want to show you the counter argument, right? Caesars, which is where I think a lot of the prize picks lines come from, is not so bullish. In fact, they completely agree with prize picks, right? They have even money numbers over there at 67.5 for Scotty. In fact, it's the same thing there, Tony Finau, right? A lot of these numbers are comparable, right? They're like minus 130, minus 120 to either side at similar numbers to prize picks. And in fact, Sanjay, right, is actually up at 69.5, albeit, right, he's nearly minus 200 for the under. So, this site tends to agree with some of the others, right? It's like an even money line there for Jordan Spieth. So this would be the counter argument to the argument. But if you look at Draftkings, they have similar numbers. William Hill has similar numbers to what you're getting over here on FanDuel. I know like Scotty Scheffler is minus money to shoot a 67 or better. I know that Tony Finau was actually minus money to shoot a 67 or better on Draftkings out there. So it's not just the sites that we've looked at. The only counter argument, the only one that I've seen that's posting strokes lines similar to prize picks and underdog is Caesars at this point. So just, it's worth noting, right, before we hop into this. So on prize picks, a few slips that I like here, and there's a few that stand out among the others. First off would be this Tony Finau over birdies. That stands out quite a bit. This Colin Morikawa over birdies stands out quite a bit. And in terms of your strokes lines, this Ricky Fowler under, you're getting a ton of value there in my opinion. This Cage Lee under, getting a ton of value. There's just a lot of discrepancies between some of the other books, but let's focus on these three, right? Tony Finau, Morikawa. If we go over here to Bet365, just to show you guys what we're looking at here, let's find the round one birdies. I'm pretty sure they have them on here. They might not. I know they had them up before, but either way, they had them up before, and I had a graphic up front. They were all at 4.5 birdies, right? So if we want to take the over at 3.5, I think that would make quite a bit of sense. If you wanted to just stick to the ones that we can compare, right? Again, you had guys that were minus money like Finau to shoot a 67 or better, right? I wouldn't mind taking that for an under. Victor Hovland was in a lot of those parlays, but like 69 strokes for Max Homa, especially when you're looking at some of these lines, is disrespectful, especially over here in FanDuel, right? Like these elite tier players in 3-4 leg parlays are minus money to shoot 69 or better. So these are the kind of props that I'm trying to mix in. A lot of two-man powers. The multiplier on prize picks is a real bitch, especially if you're trying to play all props at the same direction. And for the most part, that's what I'm trying to do. I don't hate this under on Fleetwood here. There's a whole bunch of props I'm taking, like at least 8 to 10 that I've posted on my Patreon. So it's worth noting, if you want all the props that I'm taking, all of my exposure, I post my slips on there, so on and so forth. Make sure to check out my Patreon page. There will be a link down in the description of the video. It's $10 a month, gets you access to all of that, my write-ups, so on and so forth, and also all of the fantasy content that I'm doing. Worth noting, over there in Underdog, there are a few props that really stand out here. I'd say this Sanjay under 69 strokes is probably my favorite prop over there. A lot of it's gotten bumped on this side, but yeah, you could take this under on Max Homa at 69, and I wouldn't hate it. Still a few hanging low fruits out there that you can take. I mean, even the Scotty at 67.5. I don't hate, to be frank with you. So if you were going to play anything here on this site, that's probably what I would stick to there, is those two, because most of it's been bumped. I nuked the board when it was much better priced to come out, at least at the beginning. Over here on No House Advantage, they're very similar to prize picks. A lot of their value's gone too, because they actually came out with the board after some of the bumps happened on prize picks. So I think if anything, you probably want to stick to prize picks here. Like I think they have the better board at this point, especially after some of the bumps. You can still take some of the birdie or better lines there, which I guess is something that I would like to do. Like if you're going to take anything at this point, hammer some of these birdie lines. Oh, they've bumped most of them, right? Homa's at 4 now, right? Finau's up to 4 there. Same thing with Morikawa. So yeah, if I was going to bet, right, there's a few low-hanging fruits out there in Underdog, like these two that you could take, but then an entire whole slew of bets over here on the prize pick side. It looks like they added greens and fairways while we were live. That's interesting. I actually haven't seen these before. So this is a live look, by the way, at this board. So it seems fair, right? The average last year was a little bit lower than 12 for the field, and I do think with softer conditions that you are going to see a field average close to 12. So maybe these above average iron players we should be targeting, right? Like Ricky's been really good at hitting greens, for example. Like I don't hate that. Siwoo Kim, the same kind of thing. Like you're just looking for the players. If you look at shots gained approach or just even green regulation percentage stats over there on PGAtour.com, you can find a lot of good plays. Like Hoagie at 12, like that's a really good one. He's one of the better iron players in this field. At 12.5, you do bring in a little bit of risk, right? If you hit 12, you're not going to end up pushing there. So I like these guys a little bit less, but it makes sense who they posted there, right? Some of your better iron players in the game. If you're a little bit more risk avert, like you don't care about it as much, right? You're not out here to push for your bets. Maybe you take some of these guys at 12.5. Like Sanjay's really good at hitting greens. Morikawa, guys like Tony Finau are known for hitting greens in regulation and bunches. Honestly, don't hate those whatsoever. And in fact, after I post this video, I'll likely go through my Patreon and add some more props. But over here for fairways, these seem high. I have to say, you're going to hit a good amount of fairways around here, right? 62.2%. I know we're going to have soft fairways, but I mean, to bet for guys to only miss 5 fairways is tough. So I'm probably going to avoid this board. So I wouldn't fade any of these guys at the top. Like there's a reason why they're projected for 9, but I'm definitely not taking overs on these bottom tier guys. Like I don't think there's enough separation. If anything, I would be leaning towards maybe unders on some of these lower tier players, especially the ones that are more inaccurate off the tee. Like a Harris English cannot hit fairways. It's actually maybe not the worst luck. And if you put him in there, right, you get rid of the multiplier. So how about we do that for the slip on here for the video? We'll go with those 4. We'll use Harris English as a way to get a normal payout, right? If you were to take the over on English, which I would not do, right, you'd only get 7x, right? So the fact that we're mixing in this fade, right, is giving us a normal payout structure. So that's another thing to have to keep in mind when you're playing on Prize Picks, is that you have to deal with some of the payout shifts from site to site. And see, No House Advantage doesn't have them up yet. They do have pars or better up, okay? And I guess it's worth noting they have a whole 1 strokes up. This is a par 5. It's kind of gettable. It depends on wind direction, so you might want to wait until play starts, see how round 1 is playing, or specifically hole 1 during round 1, see how that's playing and maybe attack it. But for now, I'm probably staying away. I don't have the exact birdie rate up, but I know offhand that it was lower than 50%. So it maybe with an easy pin, we see like a 60, maybe 65% hit rate when it comes to that. But until I see that in raw data, I'm probably not jumping on board there. The pars are better is a new category we've seen over the last few weeks. The average at this course is right around 3 bogeys per round. So for these players that are slightly better than average, I think it's an adequate projection to put them out there at 2.5. Your top tier players at 2 bogeys make sense, and the 1.5 for Scotty, I have to say that makes sense there too. So probably avoiding that board. But like I said, this strokes board, the things over here in Bet365, huge discrepancy compared to some of the numbers you're getting over here on FanDuel. I think you should try and take advantage of that, right? Attack some of that value over there, particularly the strokes board. Birdies are better. You got some value too, right? Other sites have them at 4.5 birdies. A lot of guys juice towards the under on those. I have to say, right, they have them projected for 4.5, but heavily juiced towards the under. So keep that in mind. It's not like they're projecting them all to go well over here on birdies. They are projecting them all to go well under on strokes though. So that's why I've, for the most part, stayed there. But that's all I've got here for the preview. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared to go out there, take on your slips, crash out here for Thursday. I will be doing live streams throughout the weekend for any of your prop questions. So if you're looking for, my strategy for rounds 2 through 4, check out my streams. Those will be after the end of play each day. I go over fantasy on there, and then towards the end, also go over the prop side of things. So make sure to check those out. I'll also be going live tonight at 7 p.m., going through some of the weather, some of the DFS side. And if you have any prop questions for me, you can also drop them down in the stream there, and I'll get them answered for you as well. But until then, guys, best of luck with all of those slips, and let's not overthink it right here for round 1. The weather looks good. The prop sites are telling us that there's value for unders compared to last year's. There's one site kind of agreeing with Prize Picks, I guess. But based on my read, based on what I'm seeing from some of the sports books, I think we're in a pretty good situation here. So best of luck out there with your slips, and I'll catch you guys for the streams throughout the weekend.